Okay, so the main component IC is an FPGA. FPGA, it stands for Field Programmable. Is it grid array or gate array? I think it's a gate, yeah. I mean, there's not much difference between the two, but yeah, thank you. Gate array. And basically, what this IC is that inside it has a bunch of blocks of circuitry. Okay, CLB stands for configurable logic block. So what these blocks are just various digital circuitry. I mean, we're going to start talking about next class, like different types of logic gates. And then in a week or so, or maybe more, a little bit more than a week or so, we're going to start talking about like common digital devices that are made out of these logic gates. Well, those types of things that, we're going to be talking about throughout the quarter, that's what's inside these blocks. And then also these blocks of logic circuitry can be connected with programmable connects. How many people have heard of a breadboard? Oh, just about everybody. Okay, that's good. Okay, so if you've heard of breadboard, you might have used one where you built a circuit on that breadboard, right? And you would, take a component, plug it into the breadboard, and then you would take some wire, right, and interconnect those components into a circuit. Well, that's what's happening inside the FPGA. Okay, you can think of the FPGA as sort of like a programmable breadboard. So you're going to be writing code that selects out these various CLBs, just like you would select components to put on a breadboard. Well, you're going to use software that selects out these CLBs, or that's sort of like components. I mean, they're much more than that because they're actual circuits, but it's sort of the same. And then these programmable connects, those are like the wires that you connect up on the breadboard. Okay, but you're doing it with software. Okay, so when I took this class back 40 years ago, whenever it was, and even here at Cal Poly, up until about maybe like 15 years ago, which I know is close to your entire lifetime, but to some like me, it's not that long. But back then, when you took a class like this and you built a logic circuit, you would do it like a circuits class, like an analog class, where you would, take physical ICs, plug it into a breadboard, take wire, and connect them up. But now this is the way digital design is done. Okay, it's using software that models hardware. Okay, that's really important. Okay, software that models hardware. And specifically, the software is called System Verilog. Okay, Lovato, that's the software environment. Okay, that's what you're going to be installing on your computer. Okay, Lovato, that's the software environment. And then within that environment, you use System Verilog to model digital hardware. And what you're going to find is that when you learn this System Verilog, it looks a lot like C language. How many people know C? Few people, okay. But you've all taken some high-level language, right? Whether it be Python or okay. Well, when you learn this code, okay, System Verilog that models hardware, it's going to look a lot like a high-level language. In fact, it's based on C. So if you know C, System Verilog is going to be very familiar to you because it looks just like it. But there's one big difference. And that big difference is that System Verilog does not execute instructions. You're not writing code that are instructions to a microprocessor. The code that you're writing when you write System Verilog, it's modeling hardware. Okay, so you've always got to keep that in mind. Okay, you're not writing code that's going to be executed by a microprocessor to run like a program. You're writing code that is modeling hardware. Okay, a lot of times that's really hard for someone to understand, especially at the beginning, because like I said, it's going to look just like C or some other high level language. Okay, but as we go through the quarter, I think you'll see what the difference is. So that's why on my homepage, the first thing I told you about was ordering a board. If you got the funds, but again, if you don't, we have boards available on a limited basis, and then also installing Vivado on your computer. How many people have Vivado already installed? Okay, that's good. If you haven't, that's okay. There's nothing due today that requires you to have it installed on your computer. But next week there will be your first lab 0 due on, I think it's on Wednesday. So if you haven't installed Vivado yet, I would do so as soon as possible, at least attempt to do it, because the reason why I tell people way ahead of time to install is because often people run into problems. Okay, it can be a quirky type of software. Also, even when it installs correctly, it takes a while. I think someone was telling me, Ethan was telling me it took about 90 minutes on the Ether connection.
About the same for me.
Yeah.
Took me 8 hours.
Okay, yeah, I mean, very, of course, it's going to vary depending on your connection. Okay.
Get it done.
Also, like I mentioned on Canvas, Vivado does not have a Mac version. And from what I've been told, I am not a Mac user, so I know very little about Macs. But what I've been told by the ITS people here is that the new Macs have a processor, the M1 processor, which doesn't run Windows. Older Macs, you could run Windows and then just download the Windows version of Vivado, and you kept your fingers crossed. It would eventually work, although sometimes clunky. But anyway, I would strongly recommend, if you have a choice, like if you've got both a PC and a Mac, or somebody that you can borrow a PC from, I would use the PC over a Mac. Now, that's not to say you can't get Vivado to work on a Mac. Some students are, well, a lot of students are very, very clever and they're computer savvy. Some people know Linux, and there's a Linux version, right? But yeah, Macs, it's usually harder. You got to do more to get it to work. Like I said, I'm not a Mac user, but there are people on campus that can help you if you have a Mac. Now, there used to be the 24/7 computer place in the library, but the library's closed, right? Aren't they redoing it? So I don't know. I'm sure that still exists. That computer desk still exists somewhere, but I don't know where it is. Does anyone know where it moved to? Okay, I'll have to find out. But yeah, I would go to an ITS person if you're having trouble installing Vivado on a Mac. We have computers in the back that have Vivado installed. So again, you could always use our computers. Also, let me mention that there's another room in this same building, room 132, which is like the opposite end of this building. Like if you go to the long hallway, you go all the way down the long hallway, just before you get to the outside doors, there's room 132 on your right. That room also has basis boards. In fact, that room has about 16 basis boards that are secured to the benches in there. And those computers also have Vivado. Okay, so again, we have resources, both the board and Vivado being installed on the computers. But again, the disadvantage is that, you might have to wait to get access depending on how heavy the demand is that particular quarter. Okay. All right. So again, if you have any questions, please just shout them out. I think that's mainly what I wanted to talk about that's on the homepage, right? The board. Oh, also, when you install Vivado on the computer, I made a video. Well, it's in 2 parts, but I made a video when I downloaded Vivado and I backed up. I have it down. Okay, so any questions on anything that was on the homepage? Okay. All right, syllabus. you've all had a chance, I would hope, to look at the syllabus. If you have any questions on that, my office hours are Zoom office hours on Wednesday, I think from 10 to 3, if I remember right. I would appreciate if you can to give me some notice, because I don't sit at my computer for those 5 hours, like waiting for somebody, for Zoom. I only get on if somebody says, hey, Gary, I got a question, or I'm having a problem with something. So I would prefer, if you can, to give me some notice. Now, if you contact me at noon, I'll still be able to meet with you, but I might not be able to meet right then, because depending what I'm doing, it might take me a few minutes to get to my computer. Okay. I also answer questions through email. During the week, I can respond to your emails fairly quickly. But during weekends and holidays, my response time might be longer, depending on what I'm doing. Okay. Let's see, anything else up here? Oh, this is a blended course. How many people have heard of a blended course? Oh, so a lot of people haven't. Okay, so let me talk about a blended course. Blended course just means that a portion of it is in person and a portion of it is online. So the way I set up this class is that for the first 15 meetings, okay, so the first 7.5 weeks, we have in-person meetings like today, right? And again, it's basically lecture, activity, and then lab work. Then during the last 2 weeks, it's not online in the sense that there's like a Zoom lecture or anything like that. The last 2 weeks, we don't have any lecture or any activities, but the last 2 weeks is devoted to you working on a final project. And the final project is in 2 parts. There's an individual part to it, and there's also a team part to it. And when we get closer, I'll explain more about that. But during those last 2 weeks, you're not required to come to class. I mean, this room will still be open. So if you need to use the computers or the boards, you'll have access to it. But I'll be available on Zoom those 2 weeks to help you, with any difficulties you run into with your final project. And then I think there's one lab that's an open lab. Okay. Yeah, the last meeting on week 8, there's an open lab. What I mean by an open lab is that, this room is open, there's no new material, but it's a chance for you to, work on, by that time you'll be working on the last lab, lab 6. Or you could start your projects early. Okay. Let's see, what else? Any questions? We talked about classroom protocol. Okay, graded work. Okay, again, the activities. Now, for the activities, and I have it up here as well as the syllabus, to get credit, you physically have to be present. Okay, so you have to be here. If you miss a class, let's say you're too ill to come to class, or you got some student activity, some event or something where you can't be in class. As long as it's documented and university recognized, I just won't count that activity. Okay, but if you're absent and it's not for a university recognized reason, or it's not documented, then it would be scored as 0. Okay, so, and I give examples of documentation, like if you're sick, get a doctor's note or get something from the health center, or I don't know, do you know if the COVID passes are still available, or did they get rid of that? Do they still have the red and green? Okay, I'll have to look into that. I mean, if those passes are still available, you could just send me a red COVID pass if you're ill.
I noticed that you have the activities on the actual modules class, so would you be able to do that and then start the class?
No, the reason I don't want people to do that is because I think there is some benefit, at least to some, and I think that when I say some, I think it's the majority. Nothing's 100%, of course, but I think a lot of students benefit by doing the activity in a group. Okay, because if someone's having a problem, they can learn from someone, and also the person that knows can share their knowledge. And one of the highest, if not the highest level of comprehension is if you can teach somebody. So You know, I think back to my undergraduate education, and I learned more from my peers than I did from my instructors, right? There's something about when someone's your peer that sometimes things just kind of click better, you know? So anyway, I'm always here to help, but I do want that interaction. Now, I do understand some people work better alone, and that's why I don't require that you do something in a group. I mean, if somebody wants to do it individually, that's fine, but I do think most people do benefit if there's some activity, you know, some interaction when they're doing you know, something, you know, they're learning something.
So student help groups for like the final project or for the labs, do we choose our groups or usually switch?
Okay, yeah, I encourage everyone to help each other. So, you know, like activities, you're at a table now. If you want to switch tables, like if you know somebody that you work well with, you know, you don't have to stay at the same table if you don't want to, right? You know, but I do want to try to keep the groups to at most 4. I don't want like 10-person groups, you know. Now for the final project, and I'll talk more about it when we get there, because the final project, there is an individual portion, but yeah, the team portion, it's a 2-person team. Unless I have an odd number of people, then I'll have to have 1 3-person team. But hopefully I'll have all 2-person teams. And I do allow people to pick their lab partner for that. I'll only assign people if, you know, someone doesn't have a lab partner. Yeah. Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay, let's see, what else do we have here? So the activities, I covered everything up here. Physically present, each student does their own work, collaboration spirit. Again, graded on completeness because they get the answers on 1 submission per day. Okay, so that's the activities. Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, the lab work. Now the lab work, again, you can work with people, but each person's going to turn in their own lab work. Okay, and what you turn in for each lab are these 4 items. Okay, and you want to put those 4 items all in one single PDF that you'll upload to Canvas. Okay, so one of those 4 items is a video demo of your design working on your basis board. Okay, so you'll make a video that shows that, you know, your design is doing what it's supposed to do on the basis board. Okay, so each person has to make their own video. Even if you're working with somebody else, like again, you can be working together, again, each person doing their own thing on their own computer. There is no looking over somebody's shoulder allowed. Yeah, you don't learn by looking over someone's shoulder, right? You learn by doing it yourself. I would also recommend that if you're going to work with somebody, let's say, you know, I forget your name, let's see, I should know your name. John? Joseph. I had the J right. And what's your name? Augustine. Okay. So let's say Augustine and
Joseph.
Okay. I was going to call you John again. Let's say they're working together, right? They're helping each other. Well, instead of being seated like they are, I would recommend you sit apart, like apart from each other, or even go to a different part of the room, do your own thing, and then compare, you know, and help each other, right? Because the tendency is if you're sitting side by side, you're doing the same thing. You know, you're writing the same code, and therefore you're going to make the same mistake. But if you're apart and you're not actually side by side, you know, one person is likely to get a different result than another person, and maybe one's better than the other. Okay, now they could both equally be good also. Okay. So yeah, even though I encourage you to help each other and you can work in groups on the lab work if you want, each person passes in their own thing. Okay, so each person passes in a video, and when you pass in that video, in the PDF that you submit is going to be a link to the video. You know, whether you put it on YouTube or Google Drive or something like that. Do not include like a media file. Okay, like in the document, some people do that. Don't do that. Okay, because that can cause problems when the person goes to grade it as far as downloading and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so make sure it's a link to somewhere like YouTube or Google Drive. Okay, then there's three other items that are screenshots. Okay, there's a screenshot of something called elaborated design, okay, that, we'll talk more about. It's also in my video. There's a screenshot of any warnings. Okay, there's like a warnings, screen in Vivado that you'll learn about. And then, the third thing, and this is probably the most important, is showing a successful simulation, okay, taking a screenshot that shows that your design is simulating correctly. And when you watch my video that steps you through the process of Vivado, you'll see what a simulation looks like. It's a timing diagram, okay? And you want to make sure that that timing diagram is showing you the data that you expect from your design. Okay, you should never download to the board until your simulation is correct. Okay, otherwise you're just wasting time, because if your simulation's not correct, it's not going to work on the board. Okay, and the follow-on class to this class, CP 233, where you build a microprocessor, in that class, you do a lot of simulation. In fact, you don't even download to your board in that class until like the very end, the last couple of weeks of the class. For the first 8 weeks, you're doing all simulation. So it's really important that, when you successfully complete this class, that you're able to do successful simulations and also read a timing diagram correctly. Okay? That's the biggest complaint that CPE 133 professors get from CPE 233 professors. Their biggest complaint is the students don't know how to simulate correctly, or they don't simulate. They just keep downloading to the board all the time, which again is a big waste of time. It's very inefficient to do that. All right, let's see. Anything? Well, there's a midterm. It's not until Halloween, so easy to remember. October 31st. Hopefully, it'll be a treat. We'll talk more about that when it gets closer. But I would say, generally speaking, I would say someone that comes to class, is attentive during lecture and asks questions when they don't understand something, does the activities conscientiously, okay, and again, ask questions if they don't understand something, and keeps up with the lab work, there should be no surprises on the midterm. Okay, where people get in trouble in this class is falling behind. Like, if you fall behind in this class, especially the lab work, it's very difficult to catch up. Okay, I mean, I think that goes for most classes, but particularly this class, because it's a design class. I think that's what makes it a little bit different. Okay, so you really need to keep up with things. Okay, you'll notice that with the lab work, I do accept late lab work, but you'll lose a certain percentage. I think it's 10% per day that it's late. And because I do accept late lab work, there are no extensions. Okay, because if I had extensions, I would require that it would have to be for a documented university recognized excuse, and I wouldn't accept late work if there was extensions. Okay, so I think it's better for most people to not have the extensions and accept late work, because if you look at the percentages for each of the graded assignments, the lab work is 42% of your entire grade, and there's 7 labs, so each lab is 6%. So if you were late for one lab and you lose 10% on that one lab, you lose 0.6%, the entire, so you can still get a 99.4%. So if you miss 1 or 2 labs, you're late getting them in, that's not a big deal. But when it's more than that, that's when it can start adversely affecting your grades. Okay. Let's see, what else is there? Is there any other questions? Usually there's questions about the grade. Oh, well, also in red here, because the lab portion of the class is so important for the follow-on class, because CP 233, when you build that microprocessor, it's very lab intensive. Okay, so for that reason, I'm not going to pass anyone that misses more than 1 lab. This is if you don't turn in the lab at all. Okay, like it's more than 5 days late and you don't even bother passing it in. I mean, you can still pass in something that's more than 5 days late. It's just you're not going to get credit for it. But at least I knew you did it. Okay, so I give you 1, you can miss 1, but if you miss more than 1, I'm not going to issue a passing grade. And it doesn't matter how you did in the rest of the class. Let's see, anything else here? You got the weights. you know, again, what's most important here, weight wise, is the midterm and the final project, right? That's like almost half your grade, and then the lab work is almost the other half. You know, the activities, is, you know, like 15%. Right, so again, if you miss an activity, not that big of a deal, right? But if you miss more than one, then it can be a bigger deal. You have a question?
That's what you said, you miss a lot, you have the lab day, all the back, a lot of stuff.
What I mean by missing a lab is that you don't turn one in. Yeah, like most labs are due on Wednesdays. So like, you know, lab 0 is gonna be due Wednesday of next week. And you got five, like if you don't pass it in Wednesday, you can still pass it in 5 days late and get some credit. So what I'm saying when I say I missed lab is that you don't turn it in even after the 5 days. Yeah, like you don't turn it in at all. So I don't know if you can do it if you don't turn it in. Okay, I think that covered just about everything. You know, your ERC student, please let me know about your accommodations as soon as possible. And you need to know what the university policies are. Okay, there's links there if you don't know. But any questions on the syllabus? Usually not. I won't say that I've never done it. What are you thinking about? What do you want to do extra credit for? Oh, you're just saying in general? Yeah. Like you don't have anything in mind. Okay, sometimes students have something in mind. Yeah, generally speaking, yeah, I don't have any. Okay, let's see. Was there anything else I want to talk about? Let's see. Oh, the modules. So that was the whole page in Florida. Then you have modules here. So like today, well, also up here, let's see what we have. Okay, there's information about the basis board. Oh, the other thing I want to mention about Bravado is that there's various versions. And let's see. 2022.1. That one seems to be better than the 2022.2. I think I mentioned that on Canvas.
Those are the video.
Okay, yeah. 2022.2, a lot of students had problems with part of the simulation. Now, I have a fix to it. So, I mean, if you did download that one and you do run into the problem, not everybody ran into it, but a lot of people did. I do have a fix to that one. And then I found out last week from one of the other CPE 133 professors that the newest version, 2023.1, seems to be good. Okay, now I haven't looked at it myself. I have 2022.1 on my computer. Okay, before that I had 2020.1 and that one worked fine. You know, new versions aren't always the best, right? Because they can have more bugs than the older version. But 2023.1 seems to be good. So, you know, if you haven't downloaded yet, you know, you can install that one if you want. But I wouldn't install 2022.1. Or, excuse me, 0.2. 2022.2 I wouldn't install. Okay, the other thing with the software, we're going to be using System Verilog. There's also Verilog. And in fact, there's one professor, Dr. Mealy, that still teaches Verilog to his students. All the other CP 133 professors, I'm pretty sure, like I do, use System Verilog. System Verilog is just Verilog 2.0. Okay, it's just an improvement over Verilog. Okay, I just wanted to point that out because sometimes people think this is vastly different, but it's not. They're similar. It's just System Verilog is more user friendly. Okay, at some point during the quarter, I'll point out why it's you know, more user friendly, but you're not ready for that. Okay. Now, the important thing is, another important thing about this is when you take CPE 233, like say you take Dr. Mealy for CPE 233, he's not going to care that you use System Verilog instead of Verilog. Okay, so let's see. So also on the modules, you know, each meeting has a link for like the Earth meeting. Now, like I said, this is the video from last spring. You can see I didn't have a red on it. But I'm gonna replace this with today's report. It usually takes me a day or so to replace it, but eventually the new one will be up here. Here was the PDF for the activity. And then here's lab 0 part 1. I'm gonna make a few comments about this. So, lab 0 part 1. So before our next meeting, which is Tuesday of next week, download one of the versions and install it. So, if you've already done that, you've got that checked off. Let's see, now I just talked about that we have computers in the lab. Let's see. Oh, you also, I forgot to mention this earlier about the board, but you also need a power cable for the Basis board. And I have a link that takes you to Amazon for this cable. Now, this cable looks just like a charging cable for like the old Android. But you can't use a charging cable because this cable here not only passes power, but also passes data. Okay, so a common error that people make is they'll have a charging cable. And then if you have a charging cable, you won't be able to download to your board. You'll get an error when you get to that part. Okay, so you got to make sure you have the right cable. Let's see. So once you have Vivado on your computer, before next meeting, watch this intro to Vivado video. Okay, because in that video, I just step you through. Oh, question?
So you purchase the board.
Yeah. Yeah, one time, the reason I have the link to Amazon is because at one time the Vigilant didn't have the cable. You have to buy it separately. But yeah, you can get it with the board too. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. I forgot to mention. Yeah, it's good. So in this intro to Vivado video, I step you through, how to use, what the Vivado software environment looks like. Like it steps you through, writing, very simple system Verilog code. I think it's like one line that represents a logic circuit. And it shows you how to synthesize, look for syntax errors. It shows you a simulation. And it shows you how to generate a bit file that gets downloaded to your board, okay, using this thing called a constraints file. So, a lot of the things in that video, you're not going to know all the details yet. The main thing at this point is just understanding the process, okay? At the beginning of the quarter, the first couple of labs, the Verilog, the system Verilog that you'll need is very basic, right? Because you're just learning. So what takes some time at the beginning is just learning the software itself. Okay, then as the quarter progresses, you'll get, you'll get more efficient in the software like Verilog and Vivado. But the designs get more complex. Okay, so it's going to take you more time, the design aspect of it. Okay, yeah, question?
What's Verilog?
Verilog is just like System Verilog. It's software that models hardware. It's just that Verilog is like an older version.
It's like a model.
Vivado is the actual environment that you're going to use Verilog in. So Verilog is what actually models, like tells the FPGA like what CLB to use and how to connect them. Vivado is just the shell, if you will. Say that again. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. And then again, if you're planning to do so, please purchase a Basis board as soon as possible. And if you don't have your own, we have some, but they're limited. And if you don't get a board by the time the first lab is due, so Wednesday of next week, just use one of our boards. And again, I'll bring mine, so you can use mine too, for that first lab. If you order the board now, you should get it by the time lab 1 is due. You might not get it in time for next week. But again, we have boards that you can use if you don't have your board yet. And you can do 3/4 of the lab work. If you go back to what we turned in for each lab in the syllabus. If you go to the syllabus. Oh, the other thing I want to show you. Is, so here's the modules, and then right here. Under lab instruction, there's also lab demo criteria. Yeah, which has some of the same things that the syllabus has, but it's a little bit more in depth. So these 4 items that you turn in for each lab, 3 of them you can do without the board, right? Because you need the board to do the video to show that your design works on the board, but the screenshots you can all do before you download to the board. All right, because you gotta have a correct schematic, a correct simulation, and you gotta have no unacceptable warnings, before you download to the board. Which reminds me that the one warning that you never want to see and you'll see that there's errors and warnings. If you get an error, that's bad. You've got to get rid of errors. Okay, your design's not going to work if you have any errors. But some warnings are just that, warnings. Like your design will still work, even though there's a warning. But one warning that you never want to see, and if you turn in, your screenshot of warnings, and this is included, you won't get credit, is you don't want any warnings that have the word latch. Okay, if you see some warning that says like inferred latch, that's bad. Okay, something's not correct in your code, and I'll talk more about the things that cause it as we go along. Okay, and we'll talk about what a latch is in like 5 weeks. Okay, but for right now, any warning that you get that has the word latch in it is unacceptable. Okay. Let's see, and what else did I want to show you? Okay, for all the labs except for the first 2, because the first 2 you'll see, what the test cases are. Because again, lab 0, you just have to basically follow what's in my video. But for lab 2 up to lab 6, these are the test cases that you'll be using. Okay, and test cases are to test out your design in the simulator before you download it to the board. Okay, so just remember that there's this document that has the test cases for all the labs from 2 to 6. Okay, the last 5 labs. Okay. And yeah, a bunch of like instructions here. I'll be going over, the different lab instructions in class. There's documents also here that have the instruction. And then here's the constraint file. Some people emailed me that they didn't know where the constraint file was. We need that for lab 0 when we go through the video. Here's some general troubleshooting stuff. So yeah, this is one thing I wanted to make sure to mention right up front. And that's probably the most useful skill that hopefully you'll gain from taking this class is troubleshooting. Okay, finding where the problem is when your design doesn't work. I'm here along with, I'll have a student assistant. Actually, for this section, my student assistant, his name is Pranay, and he'll be here next week. The only reason he wasn't here today is because in order to work as a student assistant, there's some paperwork that has to be all completed before they can get paid. So that hasn't been completed yet, but he'll be here Tuesday and I'll introduce you to Pranay. He's taken this class. He's also taken the follow-on class. Okay, so he's a very valuable resource. And, Pranay and I, we're here to help you. And, at the beginning of the quarter, as you're first learning about how to troubleshooting, we're much more involved as far as, we might look at your code because, you're just kind of beginning. But as the quarter goes on, we're less likely to look at your code, okay? As the quarter goes on, we're expecting that you gain the skills that you can start troubleshooting and finding, isolating where the problem is. And to help you learn like proper troubleshooting techniques, we have this document here. And, you know, like, one of the first things is that, you know, if your design has multiple modules, like, well, the first couple of designs are just like a single entity, a single module. But as the designs get more complex, you're gonna have multiple modules. Okay, just like on a circuit board, you can have like different parts of the circuit, like a power part, an analog part, a digital part. Well, in a digital circuit, you can have a part that's doing a certain thing and another part that's doing a certain thing. Right, another part that's doing a certain thing. Then when you hook it up all together, it does the overall thing that you want it to do. Well, typically in a case like that, the first time you design it, it's not doing the overall thing that you want it to do. And the way you start troubleshooting that is you're making sure each individual module or entity is doing what it's supposed to do. Right? Because if you have, you know, multiple modules and one module isn't doing what it's supposed to do, well, the whole thing's not going to do what it's supposed to do. Okay. So like one of the first things in troubleshooting is making sure that all your individual modules work before you look at the whole thing work. Okay, and then if that's okay, well, there's other steps that you take, and there's a, you know, like a logical, like iterative process, if you will. Okay, so that's what our goal is. You know, our goal is that you learn these proper troubleshooting techniques so you can get to the point where you can isolate where the problem is in a large type of circuit, because that's what you're going to have to do in CP 233. When we build that microprocessor, you know, it's going to have, you know, probably double the modules of the most complex thing that we do in this class. Okay, but if you have these skills, you can solve, you know, any problem. Okay, so I just want you to know that up front, that, you know, I'm here, that Prene, the student assistant's going to be here to help you, but ultimately it's your responsibility to find where the problem is. Okay. Let's see. Here. Well, the next block. This is where you submit your lab work. Okay, that again, the single PDF that has those 4 items that we talked about earlier. Here's a video by Dr. Benson that talks about a certain step of troubleshooting that we get to later on. Here's some files that are going to be later on the course. And then there's information about the project that we're in. Again, we'll talk in detail and get it, which is in the last couple of weeks. So anyway, I just wanted to run through this just to point some things out that I feel are important. But is there anything at this point that you have a question about? I mean, do you all know what to do before next meeting? What do you want to accomplish? Let's
Install the one.
install the
Watch the video.
right, and then watch the video, right? And you know, if you've got your board, you'll be able to complete Lab 0, because Lab 0 Part 2 is basically now downloading to your board and making sure the design works on your board. Okay,
When is lab 0 part 2?
I'm pretty sure it's due on Wednesday. Let me look. You see Lab 0 right here, September 27th, so I'm pretty sure that's Wednesday of next week, right? Because today is the 21st. Okay, so like I said, even if you don't have your board, you can do 3/4 of what's due just in the body, right? Because that's your schematic, the simulation, and the warning. Okay, the thing you wouldn't be able to do without a board is the video. But like I said, if you don't have your board, like if you ordered one and haven't gotten here yet, just use one of ours. Again, I'll bring mine. So like on Tuesday, you could just do it here in class after the lecture and activity. Oh, also, can't believe I almost forgot this. I got it up here. Here's the door code. This door has a coded lock. Okay, this is the code to that lock. So, you know, you can come to this classroom and use the resources outside of class time. Okay, now, provided the building is open. The building is open, you know, Monday through Fridays, basically from 6 in the morning till I think about 9 or 10 at night. Usually they close it after the last lab. Now, during the first week, things might not be exactly that. They might close a little early. Saturdays, you should be able to get in here. Sundays, I don't think officially it's open, but a lot of times I come here on Sundays and I'll see somebody pry the door open. You know, so,
Break it.
well, don't do that. Supposedly there's cameras and something, I don't think I've ever seen. There's motion detectors though. Yeah, oh, also, like I said earlier, room 132 also has computers and boards. Now that one's not, it doesn't have a door lock. I mean, you know, the door's locked, but they don't have a code to get in. So that would have to be open. They do open them on Saturdays though. And they're open, yeah. Now, the other thing is, you could come by and there could be a class in here. But most professors, if you just ask them if they, you know, you can use what's in the back, you know, most of them will say, okay, if they're not lecturing. Now, if they're lecturing, they may still let you use them as long as you're quiet. But like, if you want to make a video where you got to speak, you know, if they're not lecturing, a lot of the classes are like this, where the students are working at the tables. Just ask the professor and I'm sure they'll say it's okay. You know, I let students from other sections come in here, you know, when I have a class, as long as they're quiet when I'm lecturing, I don't care. Okay, so I think I covered everything that needed to be covered, but I just want to make sure, do you have any questions before you go? Oh, also the groups that didn't finish the activity, yeah, make sure to pass that in before you go. And if you want to stay later to finish it, that's fine. I'll be here till, well, I'm here all day, but my next class is at 12. Okay, but any other questions from anyone? Does, okay. Well, if I remember correctly, that's at 3.7. The day is at 14. I think that's what it's. Is that what it is? Isn't a minus a 3.7?
Yeah, that's what I saw. Yeah, because
Oh, yeah, it's different at different schools. Yeah, in fact, I went, my EE degree, I went to UMass. They have grade 1 through, but it's still a 4.2. It's like typically a professor, we're like a top in the class. I got 385. 2 were EE labs and 1 was thermodynamics.
oh, that's
I had a really.
still, but they're my now. That's stuff.
I remember that class. I was like. I did one place open and I think it was one of those cases because I was sick. So the kids couldn't. But the thing is, I also didn't. After that, I totally. So I like picked up all my.
It's fine. You put effort into it.
Yeah. Well, email. Things in common. The email.
Yeah.
But it was a C class. Because he didn't scale.
They have. That's right. Yeah, I can.
So
I feel like
there are so many leads. It's to like 30 G's.
yes.
Because I don't think they failed it. Maybe a few people. But yeah, it was like 2A, 2 F's, a B, 6 C's, and about 30 B's. So I was the proudest C button.
Feel like at a certain point that
See, the other thing, if people don't believe me, but it's true. But you know how you find out about your feedback? The real internet.
yeah, that you just
They put a rock. Like social security. Posts would show the last 4 year digits, but some with the entire social security number, all 9. And the thing is, most instructors did not take that. Like, randomize them, so they were like in order. So the thing is, the school I went to, what, back then, like our class was only like 40 students. And unlike Cal Poly, where typically you don't take classes together, we all took our classes together. So we knew each other. So, we knew it basically, but it wasn't. And to be honest, a couple of times I think Brian. But you see, the world was open.
I never knew it was that easy to get social security numbers back, but if only.
And we were still identity stuff, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense, but still like, so why? That's, I guess.
Oh, yeah, remember, if your group didn't give me, an assignment, do that before you go, so you get credit. You're welcome. We'll see you later. Oh, wait. I just.
Oh, my God.
Sure. Yeah, they want to write it. Yeah, I can do that.
We're going to drive somewhere, let me know as well.
Yeah.
Imagine not renting or paying for it. You. However, moment. Recently. After going on the street service, come up with a new version. Yeah, it's that's pretty close by, like, yeah. Oh, one over. Hey, with that's yeah. But yeah, one that took the longest time. I checked last night, still looking like that, it's like. Sure, they just act. Great. Okay. Yeah, at least you had a final. Still this. Yeah. Hey, think for this, you ain't got on camera. Sir. Yeah. Here's how the class, but anyway. This is my fix. Yeah, that's it. Everyone check the box. Take over their movie. Yeah. That's all. Yeah, the fun, like, they kind of, the data lasers with the data over there. You know? Yeah. Anything that are both dating. I know, like, this is pretty. Yeah.
No matter what base it is, well, right. It's gonna actually, let's see.
The cable that I'm traveling is going to the
Yeah. And those are cables right there, those are wires. Oh shit. So. That's a weird look. I got that in. After, I'm sorry, I learned. Yeah, I'm gonna go, and so it's probably gonna grab with an elf, probably. Yeah. Yeah. I'm going back. I'm gonna go grab them, like, Going. Let me go to probably. Yeah, try to be. Done. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Shice people on, look at that thing, it's all. Great. Great. It's like. So is that plugging in via USB? Okay. Too much. Oh, you have Windows on it? Oh, he does, that's awesome.
That's like for the newer.
Yeah.
And I don't see you running like. Exactly. You're running.
I like how on the bottom right, just says activate window. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Does it parallels those going?
That's, it's worth it. It does. I respect it. That's up right there. Well, that's gonna go. Well, that's awesome. What do you feel up today? Windows.
How much you paying for?
What level of terminating online do you feel today?
Just trying to see if I can get a loader.
There else is the app. Oh, I think you can do 8. That's not bad, right? That's still not bad, like over a year, like if you split that, like it's less than $10 a month. Yes. Like, some real tools. I also have it. That works.
How much storage does the?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
There's a story, yeah. Okay, you want to do?
How much? Yeah. Yeah. Fair enough. So much about the devices just to take it off. I respect it. Well, I mean, I guess acceptable. Yeah. Okay, because I like service. Yeah, so that one out. Yes. I don't use it anymore. I have like back wheel.
What's your major?
Good. That's cool. I'm doing let's go theory. Actually, see. It's not majoring in. Oh.
Marijuana studies?
Yeah.
Oh.
Electrical marijuana studies. Marijuana. Yeah. That's actually up and coming major. I'm studying, no, it's the electrical engineering concentration of recharging. Bro, they just throw away the back. It's incredibly efficient. All the drop popcorn off the ground. Not a fire hazard. Not a fire hazard. Hey, nothing's a fire hazard if you try.
Something might be saying that makes.
It's actually really cool though. That was fun. That you're able to do. Yeah, I think it's pretty fun. Have you seen a crab riding a skateboard? Yes. Boy, do I have a photo for you. I love crab. Bro, crab riding skateboard with my skateboard. I have a photo. Bro, you've never seen this in your life. Oh, I go. You check this shit out. You never seen a party. You ever see something that easy? Never. That's the coolest thing I've ever seen. Bro, we're cool. That's like, oh, no. Just easy. You came up there. Just go hard. That's great. And I go there. Totalitarian government. Totalitarian for you. Not totalitarian. Totalitarian. Totalitarian government. How hard does that go? All corrupt government. It's pretty hard. I mean, that's all we need, right? Yeah, that's how you celebrate. We did genocide out there. I forgot I have this image for a while. What? Yeah. He does say that. He said that.
He literally said, I had. That awkward moment when the oldest person, has good, like, bro, how? Like a yard, but still.
Well, they go. Oh, that on? Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah,
Okay,
good.
so, good. Is it like?
Have you used it before? Or is for now? This is. Fair enough. So, yeah.
Like if I could say. Okay, well, but thank you so much for your donation.
Donation to the cause.
That is. Dang. Roach did his homework. Yeah.
That's all you have to, is that all you have to do for? Yeah. Zero, really? Okay. Have to wait for it goes.
No, we should just, I think it's such a.
Hold on. Did you read it?
But I never there's like biomedical.
I heard, he told us like some funky shit. Wait, what?
Interesting to go.
Robot sex. It's gonna come here.
No, I to be like, you guys reviewing movies.
Literally any movie about that.
Was it okay for them to make this?
What is that? Is it really Geneva Convention?
Yeah.
It's violent. It makes me wanna. I feel like I'm the person destroyed.
Okay, I need to get.
Here, but.
So are you going?
Does it say we have to go?
Yes.
Why?
I like what it sounded like to me.
It's odd.
So I was gonna go
Gonna
for a
go.
minute.
Yeah. I ran into them. Yeah, I ran into them once. It was like, I just.
Yeah.
I need that.
Kate.
Yeah.
Oh. Your name's Jake. Yeah. Great, and Dave, John. Randy.
You brought
Jake Sean. Oh.
I have, I got my preference.
Really? Oh, yeah. I remember. Yeah. Oh, I would follow it. You're in the house. Yeah, we're in the house. Oh.
I still there.
No, so birthday. Benjamin had shown up earlier for some. He had up. And standing in the window.
I respect it.
Thank you so much, Gary.
Dude. Okay. Yeah. Just signing in for.
We read the whole thing becoming interconnected.
Right? So it's just so. They. Yeah, because this is exactly what. It's like, that agrees to it. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
I just want to say. I think the only group that, like a. Yeah, or anything else, good stuff.
Okay.
And then also. I mean, except like. I think that, but like.
You guys are.
Yeah, like, yeah. After you guys are. Some funny. Thank you for. I still love that his last name is Baker too.
See, at one time,
Yeah, get it right.
Second. Stop.
Phone's not running.
So like it's so bro.
Yeah, so, you
But you guys no, not Leonard. No.
Oh,
Somehow, wait, no,
What? You already had it.
I guess.
I might have to give you the phone number.
Yeah.
I have to give you
I
my
think Second.
I did that for all of my middle school, first changes and I thought.
Yeah, I'll put your.
LA.
Yeah, exactly.
You could what, psychiatric, but I have to people on it.
Really? I just did this as a joke. Wow.
I don't have.
That's awesome. But like also kind of sad.
Which, wow, they gave up. They put my YouTube.
Why?
What's that?
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
I don't know, I guess I got a hard name, but they put wit. They put with the hey, they put.
I thought this was just like,
Thank you.
yeah. Nice to meet you, Professor. Hi, Gary. You.
Oh. I would teach this class in supply. But starting last. Starting just. I don't know.
I want to slow this. A lot of it's slow. See if we do see. Take all.
Yeah, I would say, I mean. It might. To me, you know, like learning. A lot of it. But people really like. Your. Very. Oh, Not. You know, one nice thing about it. Yeah. It's all what gets you excited. Like I always tell students, you should always follow your passion. Take a position down, you really into it, and that's what you're excited about. It's a solution. If there's someone who gets excited with the program, I can hear the word. Yeah, I think it's smart that I, um, where are you? Are you a 70%? Oh, it's a huge for, is this your first year? Oh. It comes into the transfer. So when you say about the class. Did you have a question?
Oh, I'll be first.
Okay,
Yeah. Yes, I know. I think actually.
okay,
Yeah.
okay. You're in luck. Okay, yeah, I think I just.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, you want to talk to me?
Yes, we got it.
Okay.
You don't want to come this week. Alright, that one,
Is that something you want to talk about? We can talk about it.
I'll do it.
Well, is it part of your?
I think I remember that's. I'll even build like that's my time. But you have all.
Oh, well, let me, look at your foundation. Yeah, because that's a common.
Hi, Jared. I was
Oh,
wondering, when we get kind of study here.
Sure. Yeah, yeah.
The other class as well.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Talk later. Bye. Yes, I'm very, like I said, I think they don't have any. All right. I gotta eat something over me. Otherwise, it's snack. So. Oh, are you? I would go on this. They should have a. Is this the partnership? And on there, it should. Now, the thing is, where classes have just started. I would have just. Walk over. Usually, the office, you know, like the office sitting with the top of the office side. Yeah, it's not on campus, I would walk over there. Not sure where they are. But you could probably find it, just search like alcohol and physical department, I'm sure. That thing. Good, how about yours?
Good. Yeah, I worked at Analog Devices. Sorry.
Oh, wow.
Mainly did like power electronics.
Is that up in the area?
Same with that.
Oh, okay, so how was that?
Yeah, it's all right. It's good for working, but I don't know about anything else. It's not as as those.
Oh, okay. But I mean, did you like the job?
I did like the problem.
What class are you studying for?
I'm taking 306 with Dr. Bios. He has a homework assignment due Monday. So I figured I'd get a early start.
Yeah, that's smart. Or things start being free.
Right.
Are you planning to be here a while? Cause if so, I'm gonna run and heat up my lunch. Yeah, I just want somebody in the room because I got my computer.
Where's there a microwave?
Over in the ED department, but it's in an area where I think structures.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if a microwave that's. It might be.
I'm on the hunt.
What's
I
that?
heard there's one on the second floor of Baker. So I heard
Oh, okay.
it's quite a ways.